Let's begin with those stunning primary results last night in New York that have Democrats buzzing across the country this morning. New York City's Democratic Socialist Mayor Zohran Mamdani proved that he can flex his political muscles. 3 candidates who he endorsed are all the winners of their respective races. CBS News projections show Brad Lander over 2-term Congressman Dan Goldman in New York's 10th. He moves on to the general. Darlisa Chevalier is the projected winner in District 13, Democratic primary, and in Congressional District 7, Claire Valdez is the projected winner. Mamdani said this is the same blue wave that propelled his mayoral campaign 1 year ago.
We are showing that last June, a year ago tomorrow, was not an anomaly. It was not the end. It was the beginning.
And joining us now to break this down is Anthony Salvanto, CBS News Executive Director of Elections and Surveys. Anthony, great to have you on. I know you have all the data points on this. So let's start with the upsets last night.
I don't get to talk World Cup. I can use this to explain.
You can stay for that later too, my friend. I can use this to explain
the offside.
Yes, do it.
All right. Well, let's talk politics. So, yeah, I'm going to take you for a spin around Manhattan and show you what happened here. I want to start with that Adriano Espaillat's race because he lost to Chevalier here, and this was one of the bigger upsets. So there's an incumbent. It was a bad night to be an incumbent. And I'll walk you through that. That's number one. As you said at the top, it was a good night to have been endorsed by Mayor Mamdani. But then the overarching thing here is, yes, that point you made about narrative, is this going to be something that people are talking about nationwide? Because you do have a number of candidates, including here in the New York 13th, who are going to be talking about the label socialist, calling themselves democratic socialists, et cetera. So
hold on, just real quick.
Go ahead.
So if you're not from New York City, you're looking at this map. What I look at when I see this map is I see Espaillat's base in upper New York, right?
That's right.
In the Bronx, almost up to the Bronx.
Yep.
And then I see Chevalier's base being the west side of Manhattan.
Hudson Heights along the Hudson River.
Right.
It's a little bit more affluent.
Exactly.
That doesn't necessarily mean that's all of her voters, but it's a little more affluent along here. You got Washington Heights here, and then you've got Espaillat in the Bronx, a lot of these Hispanic neighborhoods up here where he was relatively stronger.
Yeah.
So, yes, even if you're not from New York, you can still see a story here in the demographics. And on that same point, I'll take you down here to Midtown Manhattan. And again, for those folks who aren't from the city, here's Central Park, just to give you a state of reference there. And then I'll take you over here to the New York 12th, Midtown Manhattan. And this isn't one of the ones that we were just talking about before, but it was a focus. This is Jerry Nadler's seat, vying for that. Mm-hmm. This is your west side of Manhattan. This is your east side of Manhattan. Folks who live in New York will tell you very different neighborhoods. Lasher, who won, doing a little better on the west side than the east, and then Borez in Midtown, et cetera. So you do see differences within the city. And yes, it does tell a story about demographics, et cetera. The other one I want to show you, too, is, and this geographically, I'll show you, you go through Queens and a little bit of Brooklyn here for Claire Valdez's race, where she won, again, endorsement from Mamdani, and did strongly across a very wide range of neighborhoods here in what turned out to be an easy win. And then finally, I'll take you down here to the New York 10th. Again, tough night to be an incumbent for Brad Lander winning this over Dan Goldman.
This is interesting, too, because this is my district. I'm in New York 10. So it's kind of fascinating. Dan Goldman, who's from Brooklyn or lives in Brooklyn, did not do as well as Brad Lander. And that part of Brooklyn is fairly well-to-do.
That's exactly right.
And why I say that is because Dan Goldman is an heir to the Levi Strauss fortune, but he's also been an incredibly effective congressman. So I thought that number was interesting, too.
It is.
And an impeachment manager, we should point out, too, during the impeachment of Donald Trump.
Yep. But again, that status quo, those incumbents getting upended. I do want to quickly go to one race, and I take you upstate a little bit. Because this is the New York, or I'm trying to show you the New York 17th here.
Now, this one's very interesting.
Kat Conley wins. She'll take on Waller, the Republican. The larger context here for everybody watching at home isn't just New York City. Nationally, we're not going to be watching that many competitive House races come November, but the New York 17th is going to be one of them.
Was she endorsed by Mamdani, or he didn't touch this race at all? Because it's not New York City.
No, not New York City. It's upstate. In fact, it tells a very different narrative. You've got a bunch of moderates, or what you might call moderates, coast to coast for the Democrats, who are going to be trying to take the party in that direction. This might be labeled as one of those kinds of races, but that's going to be juxtaposed against the dialogue coming from places like New York City, where you've got progressives, they'll be called socialists or democratic socialists. That's going to be the fight within the party that they often have during the years they're out of power.
I know we got to wrap this up, but it's interesting, Anthony, to me, because Mayor Mamdani was here on our show on CBS Mornings a few weeks ago, and I specifically asked him about this. I said, the brand of politics that is becoming increasingly, and now you can see after the results of last night's election, popular in New York City. Does that translate Democratic Socialists to Iowa? Does that translate to, other states where perhaps they hear the word socialist and people get a little nervous as to what that could potentially mean? He doesn't believe that it does, but I think that this race is interesting because Connolly, she's a veteran. She's more in line with what you would call traditional establishment Democratic, the Democratic Party as we know it today, before the Mamdani revolution.
Everywhere you go, people, DNR, are going to be talking about cost of living. The question is going to be, what do you do about it? So when you talk about labels like socialist or socialism, which only about a third of the country nationwide will say they have a positive view of, but that'll be higher among Democrats, it really comes down to, okay, what do you do about affordability? What do you do about cost of living? That's where the rubber meets the road in terms of defining that label. And then, of course, on the right, you'll have a different point of view. But that's what we mean when we start talking about those labels.
And that's part of why Mamdani won last year here in New York.
That's right.
Anthony Salvanto, thank you.
Thanks, Anthony.
All right. In South Carolina, State Attorney General Alan Wilson is projected to win the Republican runoff for the nomination for governor. Wilson defeated South Carolina's Lieutenant Governor Pamela Abbott. Abbott initially received the endorsement of President Trump, but then last week, the president announced he was endorsing both candidates after Wilson picked up momentum in the polls. For more on this, we're joined now by Skyler Henry. Skyler, good morning. Good to see you. So how did State Attorney General Alan Wilson pull this one off?
It certainly is remarkable, Chanel, especially considering the fact that just a couple of weeks ago, the Lieutenant Governor, Pamela Abbott, was widely viewed as the front runner in this race because of, as you pointed out, that lone endorsement from President Trump. As of the course of the last several weeks, Wilson really created this groundswell of support, building this coalition of some of the state's top Republicans throwing their support behind him. That includes some of the gubernatorial candidates that he beat out a couple of weeks ago, as well as some others, including the Republican Tim Scott. Then, of course, to put the cherry on top, the president throwing that co-endorsement behind him and the lieutenant governor after what we are hearing is the White House sort of paying attention to what we've been seeing in the polls as well as the groundswell in the Palmetto State. So now what appears to be this sort of conservative march forward towards November, with Wilson certainly touting this coalition that I pointed out with the support of President Trump. And we should point out the outgoing governor, Henry McMaster, as well. I think it is certainly incredibly interesting to pay attention to sort of this strategy that he's put together, really this strong ground game, obviously touting the support of the president, but really sort of sharpening what we have seen over the course of the last several weeks, something voters in South Carolina say that the lieutenant governor sort of fell short on as it relates to ground game strategy, what her sort of CEO-like tendencies would be when she struggled to sort of name who would be her lieutenant governor during a late debate that happened just last week. And so I think that was something that sort of hurt her in the long run. But just to illustrate how wide these margins were between Wilson and Abbott, this race was called relatively quickly, shortly after the polls closed in South Carolina. I want to say it was projected within the hour. So certainly a lot of momentum behind Wilson, who's touting the support of President Trump. Take a listen.
I also want to give a shout out to President Trump. I was honored to receive his endorsement. He co-endorsed me late last week. I think he saw the fight that in our campaign, the energy in our campaign. And I think he likes a fighter, and I think that's what won him over. I want to thank you, Mr. President.
And so now we look ahead to November. Wilson, of course, coming to prominence, his office coming to prominence, being involved with that Alec Murdaugh trial a couple of years ago. Obviously, a lot of conservatives now saying that they want to support him. We should point out that includes the Congresswoman Nancy Mace, Congressman Ralph Norman, several of the notable names in South Carolina that were widely viewed as frontrunners in this contest for some time up until the June 9th contest. And so now we will see what happens in November, guys.
All right, Skyler Henry, thank you very much.